Hello, it's me, Dr. DePass. I'm back for chapter 3. Weeds. Chapter 3. Do you really think it was an alien ship? Trey asked me. We were waiting in line for breakfast. I nodded. It glowed. Trey shook his head in amazement. He had thick curly hair and bushy eyebrows, which Flossie had offered to pluck, but even she couldn't do anything about the pimples on his face. He had on his Stanford University sweatshirt. It was one of his favorites. People on Earth seemed to love sending us clothing from where they went to school. I was wearing a sweatshirt from a place called Dickinson's College. It used to be Trey's. Most of my clothes were hand-me-downs from him. When I outgrew them, they'd probably be turned into a pillow or something. How fast was it going? He asked. Pretty fast, I said, and felt a rush of excitement because Trey was talking to me like he used to. Trey said, and picked up 2 doughy green buns from the serving platter. A lot of the food we ate was made from algae. I began, but Trey ignored me and walked away, the conversation over. Disappointment pooled in my stomach, ruining my appetite. Are you going to stand there all day? Salty Bill asked him from behind the counter. Salty Bill was the first person Cy had recruited. Cy claimed that the cook was the most important person on a mission. Good food made for good morale. I stared at the doughy buns. What flavor are they? I asked. Cinnamon, Salty Bill said in a cranky voice. Salty Bill's resting state was cranky. I put a bun and a handful of freeze-dried plantains on my plate. Then I served myself a cup of algae tea, sweetened with honey, and headed to the oval table. The grown-ups usually sat at one end, and we sat at the other. Flossie, Vera, and Trey were already sitting at our end. Memes liked to say the mess hall was the heart of the settlement because a lot happened here. On one side of the room, gray sheets hung on lines to dry. The mess hall was always warm because of the cooking, so it was a good place to dry laundry. There was a whiteboard on the wall where the grown-ups kept a list of what was broken. Right now, the list was short. A broken motor in the algae farm, a light out in the communication room, and a clogged toilet in the kids' wing. Not my fault. Cy never let the list get longer than 10 items. Next to the whiteboard was a Digimonitor that usually displayed a live feed of the surface. But the surface camera was broken. Nobody seemed to know what had happened to it, and the monitor was turned off. I slid onto a stool and took a bite of the bun. It was warm and chewy, just the way I liked it. Salty Bun might be cranky, but he sure could cook. Something rubbed against my ankle. I looked down. It was Leo. You're still hungry? I asked him. I knew Salty Bill had already fed him. Meow, meow, he said, which means yes. I snuck him a piece of my bun. Across the table, Vera was wearing her favorite color, black. It was all she wore lately. Flossie and Vera were trying to be goth, which was an old Earth style. Flossie was something of an expert when it came to Earth customs, especially fashion and slang. What do you think of my new outfit? Flossie asked us. I copied it from a digi-reel. It's a 1970s style. Isn't it groovy? The outfit was like an environmental suit, except tighter fitting and with a zipper up the back. It's nice, I told her. It's called a jumpsuit, Flossie told me. It took me forever to do the zipper. I don't know why you bothered, Flossie. It's not like anyone is ever actually going to see it, Vera said. What do you mean? Flossie asked. Everyone can see it. I mean anyone who's actually interesting, Vera said, rolling her eyes. Trey was staring across the room where Cy and Albie were looking at the clipboard and talking. Why does he get to be Cy's apprentice? Trey asked with a scowl. Recently, Cy had begun taking on an apprentice. He taught them about running the settlement. Last year it had been Flossie. Cy had picked Albie a few weeks ago, and Trey had been unhappy ever since. Do you think it's because he's older than me? Trey asked. Flossie shook his head. I was the first apprentice, and I'm not the oldest. Trey frowned. Why did he pick you anyways? Probably because I have excellent taste in fashion, she declared with a grin. I think Cy chose Albie because he's so responsible, I said. Vera snorted. I guess I don't have to worry about Cy ever picking me as his apprentice. Vera didn't exactly have the best judgment. After all, she was the one who had thought it would be fun to prank Salty Bill by switching the labels on all his spices. He still hasn't forgiven her. It's so unfair, Trey muttered. I didn't understand why he cared. The grown-ups only talked about schedules and what needed to be fixed. We kids had way more fun. 3-word story, I said. Flossie gave a little clap. It was your favorite game. You made up a story, and each person used 3 words. Trey always managed to get fart into the story. It was a real skill. I'll go first, I said. Once upon a time, an alien, Flossie continued, crashed on Mars, Vera said with a bored expression. It was Trey's turn, but he wasn't paying attention. Trey, I said, but he didn't say anything. Maybe he hadn't heard me. Trey, I said again, tapping his shoulder. He turned to me, his lips thin. It's your turn, I told him. This is a dumb game, Trey said. I just stared at him. That's 5 words. Across the room, Cy stood up, holding a digi-slate. He was wearing his command-issue blue uniform as usual. He was the only one who ever wore his uniform. He said some habits were hard to break. Chore assignments, he called to us. Gather round. We crowded around him as he rattled off the chores. Flossie, kitchen. Vera, laundry. Trey, dust duty. Belle, algae farm. And Albie, you're shadowing me. Laundry? How thrilling, Vera said, rolling her eyes. I had nothing to complain about. I loved the algae farm. But I could tell from the way Trey was standing, shoulders hunched, fingers curled, that he was not happy with his assignment. Dust duty again? That's the 2nd time this month, he fumed. We can trade, I suggested to Trey. I'll do the dust duty. No trading, Cy said firmly. Why can't I apprentice like Albie? Trey demanded. Because you're not ready, Cy said. I am so. You're not ready until I say you're ready, Cy said, his voice firm. Trey looked like he was going to say something, but he turned and stomped out the mess hall without a backward glance. A blast of warm air hit me when I walked through the doorway to the algae farm, Leo paddling behind me. The sharp scent of algae tickled my nose. This was my favorite place in the settlement. It was green, and everywhere you looked, something was growing. But mostly I loved it because of Phineas. When the Mars settlement mission was announced, Cy said he received over 10,000 applications. But when it came time to choose the crew, he threw out the resumes and went looking himself. He said he needed people who were problem solvers, people who were used to messy work in difficult conditions. Like plumbers and electricians and farmers, Cy said that was who kept a settlement running. Phineas was one of those people. He had been a farmer in New California. I made my way through the maze of the farm to Phineas's office. All around the room were massive containers of live algae. The algae had grown in batches depending on what it would be used for: food, fuel, medicine, oil, paper, even soap. The algae also created the oxygen we breathe. Phineas was sitting at his messy desk, fast asleep. He slept a lot these days, usually after meals. Hi, Phineas, I said. He blinked his watery blue eyes open, looking confused. Belle, he said, putting his glasses on. I must have dozed off. He looked at the notebook in front of him and closed it. Leo leapt into his desk and started nibbling on a leafy plant. It was catnip. Phineas grew it for Leo. There's that old lion, Phineas said, observing Leo. He's getting fat. You need to stop feeding him scraps. He's always hungry, I said. What's a lion? It's a very large cat, he explained. How large? He rubbed his chin. Oh, I don't know exactly. About 3 meters long, I suppose. That's huge! Bigger than Albie? So why do you call Leo that? I asked. He's not that very big. It's his attitude. He acts like a lion. He's fearless, he said, shuffling papers on his desk. On the corner of the desk was a jar of cookies. Phineas claimed he got hungry when he was working, but I suspected he kept them for us kids. Can I have a cookie? Did you just have breakfast? He asked. I'm still hungry, I told him, which was the truth. You're just like your cat, he said. Fearless? Always hungry, he said. What are we doing today? I asked him. Shampoo, I think, he said. Phineas made shampoo from algae. It smelled nice, but it gave your hair a bit of green tinge. Might as well get started, he said, standing up and grasping his cane. We walked back to the main area, past the hydroponic setup where Phineas raised lettuce and herbs. He also had a tub of soil from Earth. I liked the texture of Earth soil, the crumbly softness of it. What are you growing? I asked him. Fuzzy green shoots poked out of the soil. Summer squash, he said. Soxy, I said. Phineas chuckled. I don't think I'll ever get tired of hearing you say that. Soxy was my favorite own slang for great. When I was little, I hated wearing socks. To encourage me, the grown-ups would give me a piece of candy every time I put on a sock. After a while, I would put on a sock and walk up to them and announce, Soxy, just to get candy. In my head, Soxy meant great, because candy was great. It just sort of stuck. Tell me, he asked with a probing look, how are you feeling after this morning's excitement? That must have been quite a shock. Okay, I guess. I don't agree with Cy, he told me. Me neither. It was definitely an alien ship. Phineas shook his head. Not about that. It was most likely a meteorite. Oh, I said. That was disappointing. I meant about the French settlement, he explained. We should have contacted them to make sure they were okay. But we're not allowed. They're the enemy. That's what everyone says, I said. Just because everyone says something doesn't mean it's true, he told me somberly. What? I asked. On Earth, I had a large garden where I grew vegetables. Sometimes there would be weeds, he said. What's a weed? It's a plant that just starts growing. If you don't pull the weeds out, they can take over the garden. They crowd out the vegetables, kill them until there's nothing but weeds. Killer plants? Earth sounded creepy. The point is, you have to take care of your garden. Make sure there are no weeds. Do you understand? I shook my head. I didn't understand. Are there killer weeds on Mars? I asked. Oh, Belle, he said, shaking his head. What am I going to do with you? Let me have a cookie? He sighed. Okay, so before we start chapter 4, this is the page. So it says, via secure communication, the date 3/6/2091, from CDR Dexter to U.S. Terrestrial Command, message situation report. An unidentified object struck the surface at approximately 600 hours this morning. No harm to the settlement is noted at this time. I have not inspected the crash as the location was determined to be in a foreign settlement. It is unclear if this was a meteorite or possibly an alien craft. Please advise. Cy Dexter, Commander, Expeditionary and Settlement Team, United States Territory, Mars. All right, boys and girls, adults, moms, dads, everyone who's listening to me, come back to hear Chapter 4, Secrets and Gifts. See you soon. Bye.